today I'm with a special video. And I'll begin with show you a couple of photos I have, and these are seedlings from a dragon fruit that I just planted the seeds I germinated the seeds and then I planted them in soil and they grew up. This is my bamboo and I let it develop roots because those two stems did not have roots, and so I put them in the water so they could develop roots, and then I replanted them in the soil. This one is a cute trick for when you don't have tooth toothpicks. You can use just the ear stuff, clean ear stuff, and then you just break them and they turn into toothpicks, and this is turmeric, and it's beginning to grow a little bit of it begins to grow here, and it's been I think about a week and a half this way, so it takes some time to grow. And before I move on to the next, this is a video where I share some tips about what I've learned growing my plants with the planets. And this is a bit of a new project that I began in the last couple of weeks, months. Um, I'll do more about that also in my upcoming channel. So I have two more channels, and one of them, let's go to YouTube, so I will show you. One of them is Shirley a Real Dreamer, and this is the channel, okay? And this one is with the election of Libra in the 11th house, a little bit past the new moon, but the moon was still in Sagittarius, and Venus in the first house. So this is one election, and it's called Shirley a Real Dreamer. And I'm going to try and see what sides of me come up when I upload it. And that's one channel. I do need at least 50 subscribers in each channel to grow it. So I can do a live also there. So this is one channel, and the other channel is Jupiter Rising Shirley. I think and this is the other channel, where you can also see this. This is the Passiflora, the passion fruit that we have in the garden where I moved. I did not grow it myself. It's just it was there when I moved, and it is so beautiful. And this election for this channel, I can show you, is actually. I didn't really have music for this one, so I chose that beautiful song. And this is an election of, again, a Jupiter day, Mercury hour, ascendant in Taurus, and Pisces in the 11th house. The experiment with both of the elections, I think they brought a bit of different sides of me. This one is called Jupiter Rising, and yeah, even though it's not a Jupiter Rising election, but Jupiter is in the 11th house, and I kind of felt I'm Pisces rising, so I'm ruled by Jupiter, and I kind of felt more like my emotional side comes out. And Shirley a Real Dreamer, it was more, just by the name, a bit more cognitive, but I still don't know what will be. So those are the new channels, and again, here I have already 5 subscribers. I need 45 more for this channel and 49 more for the other channel, so that I can do lives there and experiment. I also suggest you to use electional astrology in this way to experiment. Okay, do something new. We have probably abundance of elections, and I will try to touch on more and more elections as I see them. I'm growing to learn this. It's also a new thing for me. And so if you feel like, there's something in your life that you want to grow or something in your life that you want to try, it's good to make another election or another two elections and try something new. Right now, we're also in Mars retrograde in Gemini, and so it's a good time to try a couple of things, right? It's a good time to make experiments so that when Mars turns direct, you get more results and you can decide what do you leave and what do you keep on investing in. So that's for the current, for the how and why this whole thing came up. And this is a video that I've never done before. I have been growing plants since I moved for a couple of months, and I had experiments with that, and I would like to share what I've learned with you. You can learn from the experience of another person, and I didn't know, and I thought I was doing everything all right because I came and checked on the internet what does the plant need and so on and so forth, but it still didn't help. So here are a couple of tips that might help you. So the first one is not to do even with the stock. When you buy, if you buy a plant from, then you have to first of all pay attention to the soil that the plant is growing in, because sometimes if you buy from a supermarket or something like that, you can find a plant that you really like, but you have to check the soil. And if you don't know how to save the plant, then perhaps it is best to leave it to somebody that will save the plant, because sometimes the soil is already filled with mold and you would need to replace the soil. Now, if you have experiment with that, it might not be a problem. But then the other thing, even if the soil is okay and the plant is okay, and you learned if it needs direct sun or not, and sometimes you find the correct information, so sometimes it's a bit of a trial and error. You also immediately, with the first plant that you buy, you must buy another soil and a bigger pot, because the plants are sitting there for a while and they grow roots. And if you're like me and you're like, okay, I'll just ask, the vendor, what does the plant need? They don't think to tell you that, because they don't think that you don't know that. And if you don't transplant the plant to a bigger pot, it will die because it will not have enough room to develop its roots. So that's just the one-on-one. If you are thinking to, if you see this channel or other channels about gardening, about plants, and you think like, oh, I'm going to try it myself, then just prepare a budget to already buy a bigger pot and some soil. It's not too expensive, but know that you need that. And then you transplant the plant. Sometimes you want to wash the roots, but if the soil is okay, you can transplant with the soil and just into a bigger pot. Add soil, water from beneath. Most plants would need you to water from beneath. And another cool thing is that you can use turmeric powder to just sprinkle turmeric powder on the leaves and on the soil. This helps both to fertilize the plant and to keep the pests away. So it's a bit of a natural pesticide. And the powder of cinnamon is also a fertilizer. Some say it keeps pests away, so you can try it. So those are two tips that immediately I have to share that are like beginner tips. I'm so grateful to have discovered about turmeric and cinnamon, simply because there so many people buy fertilizers, and the soil, to keep healthy soil, we actually need healthy fertilizers that are natural, because otherwise we destroy the soil and then our plants become more susceptible to pests and to ailments. So this is like first tip. Another tip, all these things that you see growing in the water, so you really have to make sure you replace the water either every day or every 2 days, because it's going to mold. And if you do have like nutrients, sometimes it will be better. I heard that nitrogen is something that plants like. but just to keep them in the water. The roots, you want them above like in the dipped in the water, but not completely, and they're held above because you want the space for the roots to grow. And you always want to at least try to grow the roots before you plant something in the soil. So this one is turmeric root, and it takes a while for it to grow because I see here it is already 2 weeks, I think, in my house, and you see the beginning of the beginning of these bulbs here that are eventually going to grow green leaves. And I also have turmeric that I planted. Um, so yeah, if you don't have toothpicks, you can use the ear ones and you just break them and they're okay. I was just so excited and I forgot the toothpicks, but that one is okay. And maybe they can hold even larger weight, like if you have a heavier root. So this one worked. Um, According to astrology, you want to use the first crescent moon to plant seeds, and you want to use the decreasing moon if you need to prune your lawn. However, sometimes leaving the leaves, and I want to show my rosemary here. You can see a bit of leaves on the soil. Now, first of all, this is rosemary. So, of course, if I take a couple of leaves out and I just rub them in my fingers and then I put them in the soil, it's pesticide. Okay, that's rosemary. It's just like putting the scent of rosemary, and I rub it. So it's both nourishing for the soil because it's biodegradable, and it is removing the pests. So even though we say in decreasing moon you want to prune your lawn, um, remember that the dead leaves are also nourishment for the soil. So you don't always want to, you just want to make sure, like if you have mold or if you have something that you want to get rid of, then is the time that you use it. You can see I put some crystals around. It's always good to clarify, like, always nice to put crystals in because they are in the land where something grows. So there's rejuvenation and recycling, and they give excess energy into the soil and then they get charged with new growth. This one is in indirect sunlight. You have a calcite here. And this one is, it's a citrine, but you don't see it because it's a citrine laying on some rock. So I put the citrine inside and then I turn it around and allow it to see the sun. So those are nice tips. Try to go for the first crescent moon, but also you need a good election. For example, this new moon, I did decide to sow some seeds, and I did that in the new moon itself because I realized that when the moon goes into its first crescent moon, it's going to be first hard aspecting Mars and then hard aspecting Saturn. So you always want to look at the moon when you plant seeds, or when you start something new or you bring a new plant to your home. You always want to look at the moon and make sure it creates nice aspects. Sometimes it is better to use a hidden aspect of the moon, like when hope for good, than to wait for the first crescent. But then if the first crescent makes a hard aspect with Mars or with Saturn, then they are the ones that create boundaries. They are the ones that protect something, but they're not the insemination kind of thingy. You know, it's more Jupiter or Venus or growing moon where you have something that you want to grow. Okay, Saturn is for something that you want to cut, or for it is relating to the dead, to that which we let go of. And Mars is separation, so Mars is good for pesticides. But when you plant a seed, you want to grow something, and then you need the benefics that are Venus, Jupiter, and the moon. Another thing here is that this is celery, and you can see here if I take this, you can see here, it's just beginning to regrow. It's just celery in water. I just put it in a box of an old cheese, and I washed the box and I put it in water. I didn't need, like, you don't need drainage in the beginning, and you just wait for it to grow, and it regrows. I put it in the sun, in it's sort of a kind of an indirect sunlight because it's getting winter here. Um, and this trick is something that I've learned, and you can do it with anything. So this one, you might like, if it's a new moon, also know that increasing moon is very good for vitamin absorption. So this is a good time to eat your greens. And then for every lettuce, for every celery, for everything that has a root, you know, onion, garlic, turmeric, whatnot, you eat your greens, and then you put the the, the sort of the root and the stem in water to regrow, and then you replace the water each day or each 2 days, so that it can grow. Okay, and that is another way to grow your greens. Of course, we eat stuff also when the moon is decreasing, and some of those were made actually when the moon was decreasing, but they still regrow. So this is another thing. If you don't have the perfect election, go ahead and do it anyway. Okay. Um, that's general, because it might not come out the best, but it doesn't mean that it won't grow, and it doesn't mean that it won't serve you. So this one is fennel. As you can see here, oh, this one I want to show you because I have a previous fennel. This is when it just began to grow, and then you see just a couple of days, or I think a week after, the same picture, and look how grown it is. Same thing, I took a fresh fennel, and instead of eating it, I kept the whole root whole, and I just put it in the water and began to grow. A couple of days it begins to grow, and then I put it in the soil, and it continues on growing. Look how beautiful it is. How beautiful is the green. Another important thing regarding to nutrition. I love to work with a moldavite, and I would intuitively put the moldavite in places where it needs, where I feel called to. And before I grew my greens, I put the moldavite next to a salt that I have, like literally salt, okay? And after that, I grew my greens, and I realized that I don't feel like I crave salty that much, because when you eat enough greens, you have the minerals that we have in salt, and you receive them in a healthier concentration, because if you take the minerals in low concentration and it comes with the greens and with water, and you have good digestion, then you absorb them correctly. But even if you eat the best of salt, you get minerals, but they are so concentrated that you cannot absorb them. And that is why the best way is to consume greens, and then you don't need so much salty food. Helpful, and that was something that just happened. It's like I put the moldavite next to the salt, and then that happened. Now I'm thinking about sprouting, so I put it next to the beans. I have beans that I will try to sprout. So this is fennel. There you can see my lettuce. Again, I just put it like that in a cup. Another lettuce. This is turmeric inside, and I have some ginger as well. This is not the final pot. It will need a bigger pot, but I just let it at least grow some greens, and I put some crystals there. So also, when you put crystals in the pots, make sure you don't overdo it, because it's energy. But it's a great way to load the crystals, and it's a great way to connect rocks. Also, agriculture is something that is related also to Saturn, Capricorn and Saturn, and rocks are also ruled by Saturn. So crystals and plants go very well together. If you don't know how to recharge a certain crystal, put it next to a plant and it will probably be happy. This is carrot. So I just, you eat a carrot, you have this upper thing that you have to cut because you can't eat it. So you just put it in water for 2-3 days, and then you can already transplant it into the soil. Keep the soil very humid when you're growing something small. And you can see that the leaves are growing, and those leaves you can harvest. And then they will grow flowers, and then the flowers will dry up, and you will have the seeds. And only when you plant the seeds will you get another carrot. So it's not that I'm growing another carrot here. I'm harvesting the green, and maybe I will have a flower, then I will have seeds, and then I can have carrots. So this is for the carrot. So if you have been listening to what I said about Saturn, and you ask me whether growing a little garden or growing plants can be Saturn remediation, I don't know. But it does require dedication, it does require learning, it does require perseverance. Um, because you learn, you need the right amount of water and the right amount of sun and the right amount of love, and all of that takes dedication, and something that you daily have to tend to be honest. um, it is a commitment. So yes, it could be. I don't know. If I didn't like it, I have been thinking about Saturn, but I didn't I can't tell if it's remediation or not. So here is another important tip. If you got this one was an altar that I have, and you see the cloves here and passion fruit, dry flowers. But this is I actually already replanted it. It is bamboo. When I got it, it was looking beautiful, but then as I was cleaning it, I realized that only this one had roots. And I cut here, there was the leaves, and I cut the leaves, and they are supposed to regrow stem. And I realized that only this, so I had 3 stems, and only one had roots. So I was very lucky that I cleaned it, and then I put the other 2 in the water. It took, I think, at least a month before they developed roots, and I think I have a picture to show for when they were still. No, these are already planted. Those are already planted, but you see these 2 with the leaves, they did not have roots. And so I put them separately in the water. I grew roots, and then I transplanted the whole thing. And I know it's not in water, so it's not feng shui, but it is a plant. And it is sitting next to an altar. So you see my essential oils. I just put it in, this was actually yogurt, and then I cleaned it and I poked holes underneath. And this one is paint. So it's basically an altar, a wealth altar. And I already have a crystal inside. This is a green, wait, fluorite, green fluorite. And you see that it's looking happier this way. So when you buy Lucky Bamboo, always clean them up, check if all of the stems have seeds. If not, put them in the water. You can put a bit cinnamon powder. I also put the crystal shungite because it cleanses the water, and bamboo loves filtered water. So I still don't have filtered water, and I put shungite in there to clean. And then it took about a month for it to grow stems. So I was very unsure, and only when I began to see stems, I was so happy. I was like, oh my God, it's the first time I ever did that. And also you can cut these, and they regrow. They're supposed to regrow. I heard that if you have wax, if you put like wax from a candle on the stem here, then it kind of tells the plant to grow leaves. Otherwise, it might grow a bit more. In it, a bit more stem. But also if you cut the leaves and you put them, you germinate them and they grow roots, and then you plant them in soil, they're supposed to grow another stem. So I don't know, I tried it. And for those of you who have seen my altar, this is and this is basically the leaves that grew some roots, and then I planted them. So this is a bamboo tip. Always make sure if you buy a plant, always make sure take it out of the pot. Don't be afraid. Take a look at the roots. Plant it in a bigger pot where it's happy. If something needs to grow roots, put it in the water and nourish it so it can grow roots. Um, because otherwise, like this bamboo would probably become yellow. I would feel bad, and I saved the bamboo, and I'm so happy about it. So this is pineapple. And I know it needs trimming, but I'm kind of unsure about trimming it because I don't know, like I'm afraid that it will die if I trim it. It's in the water, it grows roots. This one is basically for pineapples. I don't know too much about them. I know that you do need to have, like you do need some sort of like vitamins in order to inseminate them when they grow enough. And it's a long-term thing. So I'm just growing it for the sake of like planting it and the enjoying the blooming of this plant itself rather than waiting for a pineapple. Although, you know, 2 years from now, who knows? So some of them are edible, as you can see. A lot of the things you can eat. Those are the bamboo stems growing roots, and you can see the shungite here. And they just, you know, it took I think 2 months before I replanted them. Um, I didn't know it would take so long. Also, here these guys germinated before I put them in the soil. But then I tried to germinate lemon seeds, and they didn't. Like it didn't work. And then I thought, okay, I might try to plant something directly in the soil, but I forgot to put a bottle above. So you have to have a bottle or a cup above to keep it humid, and then it can grow. So I need to make another experiment, and I will keep you updated. But these ones were germinated, and I put them in like a food box. I had paper, and then I just sprayed the paper with water and for a couple of days, and then they germinated. These are very tiny seeds for the dragon fruit, and and now these are, you know, seedlings, and very soon I will transplant them into bigger pots so they can grow bigger and see what happens. It's just a joy. When the first time they germinated and they started to when they germinated, I was so happy. And then when I planted them in the soil, they actually grew like leaves. I was like, oh my God, it works. So this was the first time for me. Um, yeah, I think that those are. I recently brought lavender. I realized that we have lavender just like in the street, and so I tried to regrow. I just put it in the soil. I hope it's going to work. Oh, what you see? Have you seen my potatoes? I'm not sure I showed you my potatoes. Um, what? No, this is after that. No, there are potatoes here. Okay, I didn't film the potatoes because I do have potatoes. I just found a like a box right outside grocery store, but they threw it out, and I realized nobody's using it. So I was like, hey, I just grabbed it and I put some soil because I knew it can have good drainage. And I took potatoes, and then basically when the potatoes grow, a bit of the green ones, you're not supposed to eat them. So the minute the potato starts showing that they grow something, it's not healthy for eating, but this is the time where you can actually plant it. And so I put them in the soil. I put 3 types of potatoes. One was small, one was bigger, white, and then the other one was red. Um, and I planted them in the soil, and I don't know. Let's see what happens. I never tried to grow potato. I think I don't have enough soil there, but I will buy more soil and transplant it like into a bigger, like allow it to grow. So those are the things I have learned about the process of growing plants. And now there's another thing and another aspect which is a part of what I do. Of course, I'm not just going to give you gardening tips. You have plenty of channels for that. Um, but also there is the experience of growing with your garden. And I haven't seen a lot of people talk about that. Um, Basically, the first time my plants grew roots, I could feel things changing in me. And I could feel that I had like more ground when I literally bought soil, and I actually bought soil on the eclipse. And it was like, I know I'm not supposed to do that, but I did that. It was, and I just went and bought soil, and I was so excited, and I started, working with the soil, and then I felt like I have more ground to process things or feel my emotions. Learning about soil, and I still don't know how to make like my own compost. Um, Learning about soil and the nourishment of the soil, and understanding, a lot of people say grounding, go barefoot on the land, but the soil also has to be healthy. So it has to have a diversity of plants growing that nourish the ecosystem. And then when you walk on that soil, then you will have the grounding benefit that you talk about, changing the electricity in your body and so on and so forth. um, just flat land, it's good, but it will not give you as much benefit as the soil and soil drainage and all of these things that we do um, to the soil that affects the ecosystem. Okay, if the soil cannot absorb water, it affects not only the growth but also the weather. It can cause floods, for example, extra floods. The desert, and we have in the winter dangers of floods. When we go down to the Dead Sea, sometimes not all roads are open because of the risk of floods. And those floods happen when there's a lot of rain or just a bit rain. The ground does not absorb the water, and so the water begin to flow, and then you have a flood. So it's just those things that it's not that we don't know, but we don't pay attention to all that much until we start paying attention to and tending to that. Um, so the understanding of growth for me, when the first mistake that I did with my plants was that I didn't transfer them into bigger pots, and the understanding that you need space to grow roots. Literally need new land to grow roots or another land to grow roots and wide enough land to evolve, so that you can grow. Everybody tells you, even in healing, you need to ground, get connected with your roots, get connected with your this. For me, when I tried to ground, you know what happened? I flew to Netherlands, which is my fatherland. I'm half Dutch, half Israeli. And I was a month and a half in Netherlands, and I saw like I was exposed to a lot of things there, of the variety of things, and that was a part of growing roots. But I didn't expect, because I'm also, half Israeli, so half of my ancestry is Jewish, and I saw. I was not able to get in to see certain synagogues that were there. And I was not able to get in to see Anne Frank's house. So all these things that I did not expect that were greeting me there, and sort of learning about my roots. So learning about your roots strengthening the connection with your roots can come unexpectedly, because you think about growing roots, about standing barefoot on the land, and for me, I flew. Okay, I, I flew to another country that was also a home, and there was like the whole issue of agriculture was very much ingrained into the story, um, and in ways that I can't even make all the connections myself, um, but also the understanding that we do need space, just like our plants need a bigger pot. I also people. and it creates all kinds of circumstances, of course. But I think a lot of, we've come after 2 years of COVID, and it doesn't matter what you think about COVID, it's fake, it's not fake. The situation was that people, or astrologically, Saturn in Aquarius, people had to have more space from each other. And there were so many weird circumstances. For example, in school, suddenly in Israel, there were small groups of children, and they could grow to groups. So you could have 4 or 5 students, 4 or 5 pupils, children that can go to the school in each day and had to do shifts. And I had a friend who told me that it's literally like the small groups they had in Nordic countries, like Finland, or I think also Denmark, where they study in small groups, and you have 4 or 5 pupils on one teacher, and sometimes you have even 2 teachers, and then they get a lot of attention. So it was like, oh, that on the one hand, a lot of people died and continue to die. It's still an ongoing thing, whether you think it is fake or not. But yeah, there are still people dying of whatever causes, and also a lot of people in their homes. And sometimes you had to be at home with the family. And if you did not have, some people went on a baby boom because the minute they could go out on a vacation, they went out. Like they went out on a vacation. It's money, they don't have money because they understood that if they don't travel, if they don't get a vacation, they will not survive. They will not be here to grow their children. So they went on a vacation, and then sometimes you make another baby on a vacation. So we have a baby boomer generation. But also the understanding that people need a bigger space. They need bigger space. They need to have. In Netherlands, when I moved to, I lived in Israel, but when I moved to my student apartment, I was doing 5 years scholarship, and we got apartments, and then I had to rent myself for my second degree, for the end of my second degree, and I moved into an apartment that was basically one room. And I just remembered that even though I did not live in Netherlands, I know through my family that the houses there are very, very small, and enough for vacations. So I just, imagine that I'm like, it's like in Netherlands, the houses are small, and I didn't think too much of it. And when I actually traveled and thought about this and understood deeper, and everyone around me were like, you need a bigger house, even as aromatherapist, like you need another room at least to have a clinic, right? And I didn't ask for that for myself. I just was like, well, people live, in like a lot smaller spaces, and they get along and do minimalism and so on and so forth. Like I didn't complain. I was happy that I have a place to be. But also, it's an understanding that to really grow, yes, you do need more space. Even for something simple as I learned aromatherapy, and if I wanted to receive people face to face and not only Zoom calls, then they need space, right? I need to make space for them. If it's only one room, I cannot make space for them, and it's not a big room. So I literally had to grow. I had to have another apartment. And also the understanding that a family does need a bigger house. It does need a bigger house, because if you don't have enough space, then in times where all the family has to be in one house, if there is no space for everybody, then one person wants to sing and one person is snoring. I was in Netherlands for I think 1 month. What? No, 3 months. Oh my God, I was nearly 3 months in Netherlands, and we were in a hostel. So I found myself in a place that was originally designed to be a place of a vacation for families, and of course we were in very stressed situation. We were daklose, which means homeless, and I was sleeping with 2 other people, 2 other women, and they were all nice women. But we were in difficult situation, all of us, And so the problem was that either somebody was putting TV on because she couldn't sleep or she had anxiety, or the other person was snoring too. I didn't know that I'm snoring. And I was just laughing, I think, with the security person, and I thought, this is so crazy. We have 2 meals here, we have heat, we have a place to stay, night, and I'm so grateful. And the funny thing is that I feel like I'm almost dying simply because I don't sleep. And like they couldn't do anything but listen. Um, and so I realized that, oh my gosh, I do need a bigger space. And for me, when I was leaving a relationship that turned unhealthy due to the stress of COVID, then I realized that I thought, well, you know what? I haven't traveled. I wanted to travel for a long while, so let's travel. Just imagine that I'm traveling. I'll take whatever I get, and so I bought like a bed in a hostel. Hmm? And I didn't think much. I was like, well, I have my bed, I have my stuff. Like, I don't need much. Like, hey, I want to travel. But then I realized that it's not as simple as I thought. And so it's different when you have your house and you travel, and it's different when you can change the situation at every time, and it's completely different when you're like sort of a kind of an exile. And I really learned how, no, I do need my own room. I do need my own room, and then I do need my own space. There were all these things that I didn't know that are absolutely necessary to grow healthy. And of course, you meet people. I have also saw people who live in wider spaces in big houses, and then the husband likes the air conditioned warm, but they have central heating, and so the wife does not sleep, and they have this big house, and she's not sleeping. So of course you need your space, but you also need a division, a separation from the other, so that you can live in your own temperature, in what is necessary for you. Um, and as I was growing my plants, it took so long that, like, the thing that was the hardest for me to learn was that the plant needs more space. And basically that's all you had to do. It's not that expensive to buy soil, and it's not that expensive to find a bigger pot. And sometimes you have, like a bucket or something that you even find on the street, or a box that somebody threw, and you can turn it into put holes in it, and you can turn it into a bigger space. So it is so funny that the thing that was killing my plants the most was even not like the location or something like that, but simply because they did not have enough space. And how interesting it is that sometimes we don't take enough space for ourselves. And the understanding that it's not that the other person needs to make space for us. It's not that the other person needs to take less space. It's just that we need to find a place where we have space and that other person has space. And so when we have that security, when we have that roots, when we have that land that is ours, then we can connect with people. Then we can invite people in, knowing that they have a place to stay and we have a place to stay, and communication is more based on connection. Of course, people can help each other and consult each other, but the connections become better, and you can contain more emotions because you're not stressed for your survival. So this is my personal story, but I would like to hear also yours if you are growing plants and if you're growing. So first of all, we can share tips with each other, and if you do have a channel that does something relating to these things, to astrology and plants and all that, as long as it does relate to what I say and you do comment on what I say, and you have something that is like a video reaction or something to my channel, you are very welcome to invite people to watch, to put a link to a video that is a reaction to my video in the comments below. I do not consider it spamming as long as you actually are using the space correctly. and you give value to the conversation, then I would love to get to know more people. I would love to share information together. And sure, I am very likely to make the time to watch your reaction. So I would also like to hear from you your own experiences and your own evolution with growing plants. For me, I began as aromatherapist. I used to always have like a lucky bamboo or a love tree or a money tree. I had a small money tree, and I was joking that this is, small change tree. And then I had to leave them, and I was in another house, and immediately I bought it was a person that liked plants, and I was helping with watering the plants. So they were happy to have me around, although they also needed their space, and I understood that, and did every step that I could to move on and to find other places to be. And immediately I bought them like a lucky bamboo, and that was like my gift for the house. Um, but it was, and then I was doing aromatherapy, um, and with aromatherapy, I believe that the oils, the scents of the oils, they kind of give you an introduction to nature. Because I was doing channeling experiences, and I literally got like, you need to grow the plants themselves. You need to grow, like you like rose essential oil. Everybody needs it to increase love and so on. And sometimes it's receiving roses, or growing roses, or receiving roses, or tending to roses, or having a garden of roses. Okay, that can give you sometimes the same effect, sometimes even bigger effect than to smell the oil itself. And oils are good introduction, but they're introduction to something that we need to cultivate, and sort of kind of, it's not even a way to give back to nature, because even when you plant seeds, and when you grow plants, and when you grow even greens or something, it's not just giving back to nature, because you're basically, you're giving back to yourself. And this points out to another beautiful experience that I had. As I was getting up in the morning, one of the things that are really difficult for me now, Uranus has been going through my third house since I think 2018, and like anything that resembles routine is being squashed. Like really, I can't have a routine. It's even making it very difficult for me to work. But I did manage to make money. Like I did manage to, even when I was in Netherlands and I had no home, I was sneaking into a hospital, and then I could do channelings, and I couldn't touch the money because the money was in Israel. So I couldn't transfer it, but I still cared to and do this and grow and give value if I can. I needed rest. Sometimes people say, "Oh, set you up with this job or with that job," and you know that you're not going to hold this job, and you're like, "Okay, I know that I need to rest. There is no point for me to rest, and I will just hire a new employee, and I would make bad impression of them, and then I would create bad connections um, because I didn't take the time to rest when I can work when I cannot." Um, so there were times where I wasn't expected to be able to work, but I was actually very happy to work. And then there are times that, it seems like the natural thing that I would get a job, and I realized that I have to rest. I must rest, and take the time for myself before I can do something new. And so as I get up in the morning and I drink my water, and I understand this is something that I learned, drink first and then water the plants. Don't water the plants and then drink. I still have trouble with that sometimes, because you want to get up, you want to water the plants, you want to tend to the plants. No. First you drink, and then you water yourself, and then you take a break, and then you water the plants. And then you think, okay, the plants maybe like, turmeric or cinnamon, it's good for the plants. Good. Make a tea for you. Nourish yourself with turmeric, and turmeric likes black pepper to be absorbed. So you don't put the black pepper on the plants, but you do give it when you eat it. And if you want to add some ghee or some coconut oil or some oil, it helps absorption of the vitamins and minerals of the turmeric. And for cinnamon, then not more than a spoon. And if you are menstruating, then only in the third day. Okay, while menstruating, only after the third day, and it helps to regulate bleeding. Um, so, like cinnamon is good for the plants. It's good fertilizer. Good, make cinnamon tea. drink cinnamon. Okay. Um, Instead of like taking cinnamon essential oil or something like that, and smell cinnamon, and that where I nourish myself, and then I tend to the plants, and then we grow together. And also the things that go wrong with growing your plants sometimes have to do with how you do yourself. Okay, if for example I notice that I tend to water my plants too much, and I realize that I need to let them go a bit. Okay, I need to let them go a bit. So sometimes even visiting family and for 1 or 2 days not being around my plants help them and helps me to not think that I have to water them all the time. So not to stifle my plants. So I'm learning how to um, not be anxious and understand that they got enough water and they don't need more water. Okay, and also when you have to drink way more than you actually should, it means that you don't absorb some things. So you need and then you talk about soil and soil drainage. What is your soil drainage? Is the soil dense enough? So tending to that soil will also help you to absorb stuff yourself. Maybe there are things that you weren't used to absorb. Okay, this is moon work already. Okay, self care. Um, so it is also good to understand what helps you absorb what. So first of all, rest, hugging yourself, more rest allows you to receive the nourishment that you get, enjoy it, be thankful, be grateful, but also indulge in what you receive. Enjoy the beauty of your garden. I like to take photos of my garden, and that sense of surprise and joy. I realized that I love time lapses. I want to create one in the future. So to watch something grow, I find that I really, 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 really love it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, my obsession with growing has been so intense that I was in circumstances or sought for the situation or got into relationships where I thought I could grow there, and I was forgetting that I also need affection, and I also need a safety, and I also need like other things than growth. And growing plants helps me to tend to that desire to grow outside of meeting that in, for example, connection. And this is a tip that is always good if you get obsessed about something, to meet that need outside of your relationship. Um, like, of course, this could get like, I'm not talking about messy stuff. I think simple things like sometimes if you want to grow, if you want to change things, if you want to evolve, then you better find a way to do that in a way where you can do it even when you're not in a connection or when you're not in a partnership. So the dependency levels become, you will still be dependent, but the dependency levels become in good proportion that allows the connection to grow. So you don't stifle it with your need that something will grow. It also like you get to know yourself. It's like, oh, I like growing a lot of plants, and then finding the amount of plants that I like to grow and tend to, without feeling that I'm being, swallowed in my endeavors. So in any way, it is relation, but the very fact that a plant grows, it there you're not alone in there. There's another living thing that you can learn from, that is there with you, and in many ways kind of helps you to balance the energies around. Before I left my like the connection that got unhealthy, I with the plants, and they are like witnesses because they stand, they see you, they're like witnesses. Okay, they're living beings, and so tending to the plants is important. Okay, and you learn a lot. You will learn what you need to learn. Everybody has their own experience about that. Um, and you see that I grow some of the things I grow are edibles. This lovely thing where even when you grow something edible, every statement, and the whole world is going berserk. Okay, yes, but also the weather is crazy. Um, and another good thing is like, okay, I grow leaves that I can eat. Um, and the leaves of fennel, for example, they taste like fennel, and it takes time. You both get a real assessment of matter, and how much do you need to grow to eat, and how much time does it take for a plant to grow until you can eat, and how much of it can you eat so that the plant will continue to grow. Because if you eat in the right amount from the plant, then it actually helps to grow. For example, if you build a cabin from wood, then if you take enough wood, then it helps the forest to regrow and readjust its size. But if you take too much wood, then there can be deforestation. But if you don't interact with it at all, it also affects. It can create stagnation. It can create a forest that is not sustainable to human life, or to the expansion and contraction cycles of the weather. And with plants, it's the same. So if you harvest all of your plant at once, then it might die on you. But if you harvest a bit, then you learn about the dosage of what amount of leaves is good to take from this plant right now that is available for you, and then how much do you give back? Okay, how much plants do you plant? And that is very literally an economy of oxygen and carbon. Um, and they're saying the carbon that they want to dilute is you. That is so true. But when you yourself create a relationship with the plants, then you understand, like you get a bigger idea of dosages in general, a lot of awareness, but not in a way that you are like depressed, but you feel you have something, you're active about it, you're doing something about it. And that's why it can be very good for people who are coping with recovery. You do have to be aware that grief and plants dying on you is something that might happen, because you can study everything. You can study what this plant needs, what this, what that, but even something simple as transplant it to a bigger pot can fail you. And at the amount of grief that I went through raising my plants, it was very crazy, because I just didn't know that. And look at what was the blind spot, and how I wasn't even accessing this information. It was not even available to me, because the understanding that something needs more room to grow was so frightening, to ask for more space for myself. Okay, so even after I found an apartment, after being 6 months in between houses, that is bigger, then I didn't like it. Didn't even come to mind that this plant just needs to grow in a bigger pot. It's not enough that you water it correctly or that you have a sunlight in the right amount or that you give it love. You still have to give it space in land. Okay? Now, mind you, I'm third generation to the Great War and have Jewish ancestors, and then from the other side is Dutch, and the Netherlands have very small houses. There is always the question of having enough land or having enough this, and you can see how, like, just the action of putting this plant in a bigger pot and understanding that yes, we need more land, was literally groundbreaking, and it was a lot of grief that I did go through. So yes, I do recommend that you try to do planting, that you grow something. I think it's wonderful. Also, if it is some recovery from trauma, hey, this thing is like it's another relationship, and like it's also grief. There is also that you didn't see that you were not doing enough or that you were not doing correctly and it died, and sometimes you don't know what it is. So it is a part of truth, because for me I felt that no, I want more plants, I want to do this, I want to try this, I want to try again, I want to see, and I want to try, better this time. And kept on going. um, so the there is a process, okay, working with the land and matter and what you with life, is a process that can sometimes be overwhelming. um, so yeah, it's not like a solve all solution, and you need to have certain readiness for that. I believe that even the availability of those things, for example, that I don't currently have my own yard, um, but I also need to learn how to deal with soil, and so learning about it, and also grow and heal whatever my ancestral stuff with having land, having soil, having roots, having enough land, asking for more land, asking for more, asking for space, and the ability that this is possible and that we are deserving of that. And I think a lot of people right now are dealing with this, all those things around growing roots and all that. So for me, it took, I think, probably at least a decade before I was able to reach this particular state. Um, so on a more plants and planets thing, so for me, I am an eye chart, and that makes Saturn my more challenging energy to deal with. And Saturn is also agriculture. So actually, by tending to agriculture, I do probably face a lot of ancestral stuff, because Saturn is the Lord of Time, and yes, that's some, like, yeah, growing like nature is something that will you will need a lot of stories. Okay, I learned uh, a part of the people that I learned from were also people who taught permaculture and people who teach sustainability. So I watch every once in a while. I watch, for example, Doug and Stacy's channel about fermented food that I would like to try in the future, and tips that they give, which is very interesting. And I watch farmers in the U.S. and I think, like, I don't think there is somebody who was born, before the 90s, that did not hear or did not learn or did not run into some big book uh, about the history of um, land ownership in the United States and the difficulty with, the Great Depression and famine and all those things that people all over went through and had to deal with. So even if you didn't go to university, of course in university you also hear about Ireland and you also hear about the famines and whatnot. But even if you just grow around and you have a book at your grandma or a book at your mama that you just open and read, then you hear about the history of people and you hear how the challenges of the weather make life with the earth so overwhelming, and you know, you can do the best thing and then your crops don't grow, or some pest, something eat your crops, and like, hey, you know, you can't go to the supermarket, you can't, like, this is your food, and this is so very basic. And I understand why that can growing your food, or growing plants, or growing something edible can be um, facing you with a shitload of a ton of things. So I'm very, very grateful to the advices of the farmers and the people who do the journey of being sustainable, self-sustaining. And I'm also very, very grateful to the people who do remind us that, you know, you don't have to have 5 acres of land. Just, you know, grow that carrot, or grow that, you know, lettuce again, or regrow that, and just enjoy the process, because enjoying the process here is important. Uh, just by doing the most basic thing of planting a seed of something that is edible, there is such additional value of watching something grow, of watching the beauty of the leaves, and then the flowers that turn into fruits, and the cycles of nature, and learning about it, and watching the process you have with that, is just so beautiful that it is in itself worth it. Um, and and the awareness. For example, I had big awareness to waste. The understanding that if I boil my eggs instead of frying them, that I already have the eggshells disinfected, and then I can use them. Have a blender. I can use them as powder, that I can extract the vitamins and the nou ja, yeah. How do you call this? Sidan. Nou ja, the one that is good for the bones. Never mind. The vitamins out of it, and then I can dilute it and water my plants. So I never thought about this before. Or you can use if you cut the lemon in half, and then you use the lemon, and then you can just put soil in the lemon, and then you have a biodegradable um, uh, pot for your seedlings. So you plant a seed in it, and then it grows into a seedling. Then you can just transplant it in a bigger pot, and the lemon peel itself is biodegradable. So I haven't tried it. I don't know if it molds or not, or how do you make it like not mold and actually be biodegradable. I don't know. But this is another tip that I received. And so you become more aware of what you're putting into your mouth. You have more incentives to put good things into your mouth. You have more awareness of the economy of every resource, not just you know, money, but it's also analogies that you can put into money. For example, if you put money aside, then you know that you can only take some of it without killing it, because you know, money grows on trees. And your wealth is also a living thing. Wealth is something that is alive. And also you learn about all the things that divert your attention from stuff. I had a story about pine tree, and pine trees, they actually have a mechanism where if there is, you know, forests burn, and so they inseminate when forests burn. So they get burned, and then they can actually inseminate by burning, and that's how they grow new trees. So actually, if you want to grow a pine tree, you need to take the like the little fruit there. It's just dry fruit, and then you burn it, and then you can inseminate that, and then you can grow a pine tree. And so this is like an adaptable structure that you have the problem of forest fires, and so the trees have adapted themselves. Funnily enough, if you use essential oil of pine, it is good for your breathing. I am not joking. This is nature. This is the humor that you find in nature, and how nature just, it's not going to judge what is. It's just going to develop a mechanism that works for it. But this is so you know, that the plant that inseminates itself during a fire has essential oil that is good for your breathing, to clarify the lungs, basically. Um, so you learn a lot from the wisdom of these living beings, and you also learn the stupid things we do that we can stop doing. For example, it's very good to use an essential oil if it is, and I'm speaking as a aromatherapist, if it is the first time and your only connection to nature and it helps you grow. But you know, sooner or later it's time to grow a plant. If you use lavender essential oil all the time, then maybe you should tend to a lavender a plant, and then you will learn more about the lessons of lavender. And I recently found one. And listen, I'm living at least for 6 months where I am, and it took a couple of months before I noticed we have rosemary growing. The first plant I noticed was actually geranium, and then only then I noticed there's also rosemary. Just growing in the street, we have by the sidewalks we have plants growing. So the first one I caught was carrots, which I knew was living where I was growing where I lived, and I hope to plant carrot trees as well. This is like investment for the next. Carbs are like the special for me because when I learned about them, I realized I want to generate wealth for my children's children. And basically, when you grow a carob tree, it will only yield fruits in 70 years. So it's very, very special. It's a very beautiful way to invest in the future of the future generations and to plant seeds for future generations, to have, you know, oxygen and a fruit that is very, very nourishing, even and grows even in the harshest of climates. So yeah, that's about carb trees, and of course the mentions in the Bible. So if that is something that you or your ancestors were close to, that can be another way to get close to that sort of tradition. And only recently I realized that they also have lavender. So I was just passing by and I was looking at something and I was like, is that lavender? And oil. So on one hand I had lavender, and then I was like, I know this can be, and I rubbed the leaves and it didn't smell, but then I rubbed the flower and it was lavender, and I was like, oh my god! So I took a small root, a small branch, and hope to root it in a way that, of course, will not hurt the flower. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have been using lavender and had a video about lavender for so long, and now only now do I run into this lavender that has been there in a place where I walk a lot, and I didn't pay attention to it. It was like it was not available for me. Okay, it was there all the time, but it was not available for me to access just yet. Um, so you will run into this thing that certain information comes to you in time. But then if you are the type of person that, you know, you smell lavender, okay, you might get a bit of wounds, and you put it on your wounds, and then you dilute it, and then you learn about it, and then maybe it's time to grow the plant, and then, you know, germinate it and tend to it and learn about it, um, and see what's happening in your life, what's changing in your life as you grow this lavender, or grow this flower, or grow this fruit. And you see how, for example, rosemary, the first thing I found when I got to my apartment was rosemary. And when I was in between houses, I was channeling, and I was buying rosemary oil, like somebody helped me, and I had a weird request. I didn't ask for anything. I was like, I need some essential oils. Because they had food there, and I didn't want to bother anybody with their own budget, but they knew that essential oils really, really helped me. And then I saw a bit of rosemary, and then I just chopped a couple of leaves and put it in my pocket. And so the first thing that I saw was rosemary, and then after I cleaned the house, I saw a bit of clove. So there were people living there that had clove and then had rosemary, that were working with herbs. Many things, like many really, really, really interesting things. It really is a journey. So, and the only plant that survived from the plants that I tried to raise before I put them into a bigger plant was rosemary. And so I put rosemary into a bigger pot without it asking. So it's like I didn't wait for it to perish. It's like, oh, now I know that this is the thing, and then I put my rosemary there. Um, so even when we encounter also crystals, for example, I did not know. I used to work with rose crystal that was from Madagascar, and particularly I like the Madagascar one. Rose quartz are great; they're very accessible, and the Madagascar was very expensive. But for some reason, I felt that this Madagascar is very helpful for me, and it was the time where I had, I think, first Saturn opposition in my moon, and then Pluto opposition in my moon. But from Saturn, especially for Saturn, I used this rose quartz, and it helped me a lot for the transit. And of course, Saturn rocks. But it was like, why Madagascar? You know, and both, of course, it's both Mars and Venus. But I was like, why Madagascar? And I didn't know. And I looked a couple of years later, like only this year, I was looking into astrocartography and I checked my moon line, and lo and behold, Madagascar is on my moon line. And I was like, oh, oh my God. I need to check Chesky as well because I like Moldavites a lot, and I have a very evolutionary stories with Moldavites. Many people have. But isn't that interesting? So you work with the crystals for a while, and then it's time to change a phase. It's time to learn about the lands that they were created. It's time to learn about ethical crystals. How do you create ethical crystals? How do you know that the crystal is ethical work? And it's also time to travel. Okay, it's not just about, because the best way to work with the crystal is to travel to the place that that crystal is. This is the best. This is the best. Because you're supposed to see the world. The crystals show you the energy of the place, but heck it, you need to be there, you need to travel. So you need to both grow roots and travel. And only in the recent days, after I have experienced that, with Saturn in my 12th house, kind of growing me up, and kind of like those travelings that you like, it's not a privilege. Because when you go, for example, if you, I did not grow in Netherlands, but because like half my family, then I know a lot of stuff. And right there, if you hold a car, you pay 50% tax for luxury tax. So having a car of your own is considered luxury. A lot of people have cars, like you have Teslas everywhere, and the best, like Lightyear One, I think is the best I've heard of around just producing solar vehicles, and purely solar vehicles, like. So it is in Eindhoven, and like they're amazing in technology. It's not because they can't make good technology. It's a certain sort of culture where your has a lot of value. Like you're supposed to grow, you're supposed to do something. Not ask for help if you can do it yourself, but also if there is a disability or something like that, then it is acknowledged. It's a ableist society, but yes, there can be like over. In Netherlands is so harsh. You have floods and climate, so you have to be very resourceful, and you constantly have, even the roads, you have to build them, or the building, you have to build them anew all the time. So you have to be very efficient. You have to basically catch up to nature's cycles. So there is no time to complain. And you're expected to work even with the harshest of conditions and be resourceful. And that is something that is quite similar to Israel in a different way, because in Israel nothing works. I heard a person who was very successful in Israeli high tech. I have no idea who he is. And yeah, Israel is so successful, blah, blah, blah. And so he said, in Israel, nothing works. If you go to, I don't know what country, then you won't be able to have a startup nation there because everything works. Here you have to improvise around everything. So with Netherlands, it's more the nature that you have to work with. And in Israel, it's just like the structure, the infrastructure, the government is like, you have to make your own way. And so it's a startup nation because people don't have it. Like, of course, the people who do startup, they play with some money so that they do have, yeah? Now, there is no such a thing as a self-made billionaire. Um, However, um, those two cultures pretty much raise you um, not to ask for too much, um, but do what you can alone. It's not about not asking for help, it's just that the situation where it's like help, feed yourself if you cannot move, if you have disability or mental disability, which they do acknowledge in Netherlands, but it's not about flexibility. On the other hand, they do acknowledge a lot of things that other workplaces do not acknowledge. So I'm not saying it's a bad place. Okay, you can have 2 years where you say, I worked myself so hard and I feel that I'm drained, and you can have 2 years off when you can refresh yourself or change your profession because they want you to be efficient. So they are very much aware that you do need to rest to be efficient. Um, like there are pros and cons to every place. Um, but anyway, those two places are places where, like, if you think about, I need better soil, I need more space, especially something to do with more matter, more space, more matter. I need to travel and to have a home. It makes it quite difficult to even conceive that. And only in the last couple of days, like this year and last year, I definitely realized that all the things, all the times that they were trying to give me, regulate the mood or to this or to that, and I realized that all of that was effective, was actually concerted that I took for ADHD, but it helped me not only with that. I was just watching even astrology videos, because I read it for astrology videos after I took a break from studies, and then I realized that I take it for astrology video, and then I would spend the time, like watch a couple of videos, and then I would learn, and then things would come up from past experiences, and I had the buffer of a bit of high to process these things. So I was responsibly using that. Actually, even more responsibly than when I was studying, because I no longer had the pressure. And that was the only thing that was effective. And after a while, I didn't need it. I moved to essential oils, and then I traveled. And I realized that to travel and just by to get along, learning something new, not you go to school or to work, then you usually go the same path, no matter how much you try to change that. Changing the patterns in the nervous system, that was creating new memories. And oh my gosh, like that was actually like cognitive behavior therapy. But it sounds so far-fetched, because if a person sometimes needs a vacation or to take a trip somewhere, um, and for me it was like exile. In my mind I said, I'm traveling, because the things that I've learned today, I know not to book a bed in a hostel, because I know that I need a room. I don't need a bed, and it's not because I'm, like high maintenance. It's because I need to sleep well, and I need to have my own space. So even when I will travel, I know that this is something that is true for me. So I've learned that, yes, I was in between homes, but I was in a hostel, and that hostel was made for families to vacate. And then in Christmas, they turn it into a shelter. Um, that happens in Netherlands. I haven't seen that happening in Israel, although it should have been, but no. Um, so those the traveling is as cost efficient as to try to give somebody many pills that might not work, or they might work for a little while, but eventually a person needs to change. eventually the life circumstances need to change. This is something I know and learned as holistic health practitioner. What I'm giving people is not the blend of essential oils that I make for them or tips about nutrition. What I'm giving people is basically an understanding. We can think together. How do they change their lives? And this is also why I took a bit of break because I realized that some changes in society are needed. And yes, I learned about my cognition, about mindsets, about working with plants, about all these things. I can use those tools to create the inner changes that allow for the larger changes in society. Absolutely. Also, we understand that yes, there needs to be activism, there needs to be a change of social structure so that people will live better. Just the understanding that that it should be not a taboo to fund vacations for people or traveling for people as a way to maintain the health and meetings even abroad so that they see people from other culture. It is very beneficial for the prosperity of the economy, the land, the company or whatnot. So a lot of companies know that. Of course, there are companies that know that, but it is also something that we need to learn as individuals to relax into that, bigger pot that we can grow roots deeper, and then we can travel and we can connect with each other and we can make a contribution and be a part of society. So we also need to be nourished, and that would. And again, I'm not saying don't take pills, don't take this. I know some people that cannot. Sometimes you have this traveling and you have everything and you do need a bit of a boost, and that's okay. Like I'm not, there's nothing wrong with taking your medications. If it doesn't help you, and not only that, it makes you feel worse, then it is not instead of the things that you need to happen in your life. If you need a bigger pot to grow, you need a bigger pot to grow roots. If you need another room in the house, if you need your own room, you need your own room. If you are a singer and you don't live in a neighborhood where you can sing or you have a place where you can sing, then it's going to manifest in your health. That needs to change. It doesn't matter how many oils I give you. It doesn't matter how many pills you get, so your other doctor gives you. It doesn't matter how much, jumps in the air you do. Eventually, you also need to speak. You also need to sing. You also need to let your voice out. And that's a part of the. It's getting big, but I like it. A lot into it that, wow, people need to hear. Speak. So any more things that I think about in this process? Yeah, well, for me, gardening, when I started growing plants, I was in between houses, and needless to say, there was not always available food. Sometimes I had to get my food in ways that were not so legal. And me, I like to respect the boundaries of my sexuality, and so I had to steal, right? Like many people. And so for me, when I tended to growing plants, it was like, hey, I grow life here. And I thought, well, I cannot do something wrong, planting a tree, you know? If I ask myself what is the right thing to do, then the answer, and one of the answers is go plant a tree and water it. It is not the wrong thing to do, okay? It's nothing wrong to grow a plant. It's nothing wrong to plant a tree. It's nothing wrong to contribute to more green in nature. That's something that I can do that is beneficial for me, for society, it is something I can do with myself that I don't have to justify to anyone, and that I don't have whether it's the right or the wrong thing, or whether it is time now to stop doing that and do something else. Or maybe if I try to be holier than the Pope, then I will die, and this is not a moralistic thing to do. To die is not, is to this. If you want to live, and then not to let yourself live, it's also not something that is moral, right? So um, that was something. And I had in mind Voltaire, and if you read Candide by Voltaire, then it's a story about a person who tries to find justice or morale in this world, and he doesn't find it, and eventually, as he grows with his journey, he to tend to his garden, and he just grows his garden, and he doesn't try to make the world right, and he doesn't try to find anything. And okay, I'll just tend to my garden, I'll just do Voltaire. Um, and that was a part of the story. Tremendous beauty there, and tremendous joy at the living. And yes, there is also grieving, there is also death, there is also fatal mistakes that you did with your plans. But there is also a lot of life that is just so, sometimes I say, oh, come on, like, why didn't I do that before? Why didn't I just chop off the root of the lettuce and put it in a cup for it to regrow? Why didn't I do that before? you know? And I'm so happy that I'm doing this now. So um, all those things are just the richness of life, um, that you can. And I don't idealize. If you are going through rough times, then trying to water a plant and then the plant dies on you. I had a friend who was recovering from some very severe trauma, and she took a dog and she took a pet, and she was so happy, and then the pet died. Needless to say, everybody has to watch that she will remain alive and not, and so on and so forth. So I'm not saying, oh, grow plants, it will be okay, it will be lovely. No, there is a path of growth here. If you know that it is time that it's not going to necessarily replace your psychologist or therapist or something like that. For me, I went through a certain violation with my therapist, so I'm not the person for whom that worked. But then it's also visible in my chart. It's not necessarily for everyone. So I'm not saying, oh, go, watch me go, grow plants, and your life will be wonderful. As you can see, it is a process, and it's almost like unexpectable what the things that you think about. So yes, things happen. Yes, some plants won't make it. Sometimes you have mold, sometimes you watered it too much, sometimes this, sometimes that. But also plants will grow, and life will flourish. And sometimes even I would be like, I remember when I was very, 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 very sad, and there was a flower that I grew, and I had a bottle of magnesium that I finished, and then I put water in it and put the plant there. So it got vitamins and it grew new plants, new flowers. And on that day, I saw the new flowers, and I was like, and then two grew, and I was just having this, I was all in joy and tear and wonder and awe and fright and all of that together. So the wonder of life growing, and even unfortunately too relevant that even with wars and even with so much death around, flowers bloom, plants grow, there is renewal, there is rejuvenation. It can be both a painful understanding and a relief in understanding, and what can you do but plant more seeds? What can you do but grow more plants, and grow more life? And yes, a lot of people went through a lot, and then they decided to grow life here. And I would not be here if they didn't decide that, and probably a lot of you wouldn't either, because all of us are second or third generation of something, right? Um, so this is my plant. By the way, I recently ran into a video of someone, I don't remember the video. It was somebody who mentioned that every 80 years there is another grand like war or crisis or something. So I'm thinking Uranus cycles. So it would probably be like new cycles of Uranus or something, because that's around 80 years. Um, but hey, like, I don't know. Maybe you do. So it's like, maybe I'll do another video about that, but I need more research. Any case, that is my stories of growing plants with the planets and growing with my plants and planets. Thank you for watching. You're very, very welcome. I'll show you the channels again. You're very, very welcome to also subscribe my other channels, and there's a social experience that I do. One is Jupiter Rising Shirley, and there I need 45 more subscribers to do lives also there. And then the other is Shirley Tully, a real dreamer. I only have one subscriber, and that is probably me. So I do need your help. 49 more subscribers, and then I can do a live there and see. Those two were created with two different elections around the new moon, just a bit after the new moon in Sagittarius. The first with a Libra in the 11th house. This is this channel, and then the second with Pisces in the 11th house with Jupiter in Pisces. And I did feel something emotional coming out of me there. And of course this channel remains. And I noticed that in the election for this channel, I had the moon increasing. So moon increasing is for a project that grows, and indeed this channel is since 2013. And now we are in 2022, almost 2023, almost 10 years, and I've done a lot, and I've changed a lot. You can watch previous videos and see the process of growth that I had since. So thank you so much for watching, and I will, you can subscribe of course to this channel as well and receive notifications. I'm still active on this channel. I do give readings, so you might want to contact me for that too. I also opened a new Twitter that I don't know, like maybe I should show that one either. So it's my new Twitter as well. Shirley Tully, a real dreamer, only one follower. I already follow 15. And little experiment to see. I have the chart where I opened. This is the chart where I opened this channel. So again, we had Libra in the ascendant with Venus in Sagittarius. It was right after I opened the channel for Shirley Tully, a real dreamer on YouTube. And I have Tumblr, which I still don't know if I know how to access. So yeah, there's also a Tumblr. Yeah, I'll check it later. So those are news, no places that you can catch me, and write me if you want a reading. So I am an astrologer, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye, and have a beautiful day. I would love to hear your stories. I would love to hear your stories. You can definitely put out a video of yourself, show your, it's your plans or your stories or your history or whatnot, and we can share, and I can make the time to watch your videos, so we can all have a more equal and lovely experience of connection. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.